Hey everyone, welcome to week 12. I can't believe it, but we're getting ready to make the shift next week into our final unit where you'll be focusing on your work in philosophy and your essay, and then obviously your final presentation. If you don't know a lot about that or you're worried about that, I don't want you to be worried. Basically, to break it down, you can check it out in the syllabus. But week 14, you'll actually be submitting an essay. Week 15, you'll be preparing your final, which will be submitted. It's going to be a recording. It'll be a presentation where, based on the work that you have done for your essay, so it won't be additional work, it'll be based on that work. You'll actually be developing some sort of digital component. So I would, Google Slideshow, PowerPoints, something in that realm. Canva is a free platform that you can also develop slideshows in, and you can also record in Canva. I'm going to share this week and next week some tools with you for free screen capture and recording. Right now, I'm using Screencastify. So if I click this, you'll see it pull up the option to stop or record. What's great about this one is you actually can embed a webcam. You can do all sorts of things. I know new Microsoft, I'm pretty sure, has the ability to do that. And honestly, you could use like a Zoom um, or maybe even like a Google call and record it, share your screen and record yourself, even though you're the only one in the meeting. So there's lots of free ways to do this, but you can look ahead to, week 15, where I give you all the information. Actually, I'll probably share it week 14 and week 15, all the information about developing your presentation. So expectations, there'll be a guide for you. But you can also reach out to me. I'm happy to meet with you at any time. So that's just some secretarial work that I wanted to touch base and make sure everybody feels good and confident about moving into the final unit where more of your performance based work like essay and presentation is going to be involved. And I know all of you, I promise all of you will be successful, can be successful. But I do want to stress the fact that as you're working towards your essay, so that's just a few weeks from now. This is week 12. Next week, we've got your annotated bibliography and outline due. So if you're nervous at all about completing those tasks, I would highly encourage you to go ahead and look at week 13 and review what those expectations. So that way, if you have any questions, you want to work ahead, or you even want to have a meeting with me, you are able to do that. Okay. So I just want to encourage you to do that. My expectation is that when you turn in your essay in week 14, it would be the final version of that essay. So you've written a rough draft, you've met the expectations, you've already submitted your annotated bibliography and outline in week 13. You've maybe got someone to peer review for you. You've sent it to me in advance and had me look it over. I'm happy to do that. Or you've even visited, your tutoring center there at Judson or the Student Success. I'm sure that I know that they have those tools available for you. You can also use tools like Grammarly and Turnitin to check for citations that maybe are incorrect or sentences that maybe just don't quite make sense. So I just want to encourage you to, if you're nervous at all about that essay, that you would go ahead and get to work. This week is really designed to help you really start fleshing out and getting some experience under your belt so you feel really ready to write that essay. So in task 1, I'm going to have you do a check-in. I want you to spend some time in reflection, and I would like you to answer these following questions. Now, you're going to answer those questions. You're not going to post them in a discussion forum. You'll just answer them right here, and you will submit that to me for this week. When you shift to task 2, I'm just going to read this with you, and this is what I'm talking about right here, task 2. And I'm going to read this out loud, so follow along. So at what point do we move from learning about philosophy to doing philosophy? As you could probably guess, Anyone who spends time asking questions about themselves, their experience, or their reality is doing philosophy. As college students, though you are all different and here for different reasons, you are all philosophers and you are making judgments based on your perception all the time about what is valuable to you, what you will believe, and how you will approach the world. Even your responses to the task above were a form of philosophizing. Okay, so this week, as you can see, I'm in the middle of typing a sentence, but I wanted to pause and share some thoughts with you. So last week, I challenged you to create a proposal for your essay. So you're choosing a topic, right? You also kind of chose choosing a real world scenario, right? And I want to help you expand on that for this week. So I'm hopeful that everybody who's listening kind of knows which topic that they would like to cover and has kind of chosen an area where they would like to look at this topic. So perhaps if you're an architecture major, which I know many of you are, you're looking at some form of, architecture or design. For example, I had 2 students last semester do projects. One was on free will and choosing color in residential design. I thought that was very interesting. One was on the ethics of urban planning and designing towns and cities where people can get around, and specifically walkability. So those are 2 examples of, ethics, human action, free will in kind of a real world context. But the reality is, even if you're not an architecture major, there's really no area of life that you can't visit and think more deeply about and see how some of these topics apply. Now, I'm giving you some examples below for this week that I would love for you to explore. There's a great article. I loved this article. It gives tons of examples, and it's what's the relationship between philosophy and comedy. My husband and I watch a lot of Netflix comedy. So he's a big fan of stand-up. And as more of the philosopher side of our family, I'm always fascinated about the types of questions and the way comedians analyze society. So comedy might be the way to go if you're struggling to find something that really that you're excited about. If you're into comedy, whether that's film or stand up, maybe this is the way to go. Hip hop, rap, and slam poetry. One of my favorite documentaries to this day. It's old now. It's back in 2015, actually from Chicago. Some of you may have heard of the conference Louder Than a Bomb because it usually happens at one of the local Chicago schools. So this is a clip from Adam Gottlieb, who was one of my favorite students in that documentary, and his work was, I thought, incredible. And that piece is called Maxwell Street. I also included an article here called The Spirit and Philosophy of Hip Hop. One of my favorite TED Talks of all time is I think her name is like Leah or Lena Borodotsky. I'm gonna butcher her name because I'm not looking at it. But this is an incredible TED Talk. It's called How Language Shapes the Way We Think. So if you were really into like philosophy of the mind, but maybe not so much like the trippy soul side of it, but maybe actually like the neuro side of it, this is a very interesting way to think about kind of like neuroscience and language and how it really does shape our reality and the way that we live and move in the world and our action ultimately. A couple of films that I threw in here, and I might add some more. One is Inside Out. I've recently watched this with my kids. I have a 2 and a 3-year-old, and I thought it was a really incredible film. So if you're interested in psychology, if you're a psychology major, doing this or something like this for your project might be interesting to you. Also, it's old now, but the movie Inception really plays with how we perceive reality. So philosophy of the mind, it's kind of a more trippy experience than, a more like linguistic approach. There's tons of stuff in here. I'm going to be adding a theology section. I was just thinking, if you're a worship major, if you're interested in pastoral leadership, even like, analyzing what's going on in chapel one week, the messages in chapel, or choosing your favorite theologian. Mine happens to be Miroslav Volf. I've shared some of his work with you, but I am going to be adding to this list. But the challenge for this week is going to be finding a lived experience for you during the week that you can kind of analyze and develop a post about, that you really want to build into your essay. I want you starting really engaging and thinking about your essay and what your topic's going to be and how you're going to find the real world scenario. So for example, if you're into pastoral leadership, if you're really thinking that about like that as a career, worship arts, going to chapel this week and, doing more of an analytic approach where you're sitting, maybe taking some notes, and just listening to the words or the songs and, asking yourself some questions about meaning and tying that to, one of the topics, whether that's free will, the mind, perception, it really, it could be anything within the philosophical world, but I'm going to encourage you to stick to one of the topics, we've chosen. Ethics, human action. I know a lot of time in chapel, they'll bring in people who are trying to be world changers. So that's something you could do this week. If you're an architecture major, maybe you visit a building, maybe you visit an interesting point of design that's either problematic, maybe it's a building on campus, or maybe it's a building that you're in right now. The way things are set up, how does it make you feel? How does it make the experience? How does it really create your reality? That might be an approach that you take. Do some analytical work. If you want to choose this comedy vein, like either, I don't know where we're at. I can't know the future where we're going to be with COVID, but if you feel comfortable finding a show, in the area, going to a concert, getting out of your comfort zone, even like if you're in architecture or you're interested in design, going to a coffee shop, right? And I always worked in coffee shops, still do to this day, to try and find inspiration. So there's so many real lived experiences that you could have this week, whether they're at home or you're actually going somewhere, you're going to a church, you're going to a building, you're, maybe even getting outside of your comfort zone. Maybe you attend another type of religion service, right? I remember when I was in Judson, I went to a couple different types for a class. It was like I think an Eastern Orthodox church, and I visited a temple. So there's like all kinds of things that you could do this week, to kind of get more experience before you move forward with this essay. So you'll have your own anecdotes and your own personal lived experience to bring to the table. So when I finish typing this paragraph, the task will be that I'd like you to provide a 200-word at least analysis of your experience. 200 words isn't a lot, totally doable. I would like you to pull in some of the sources, whether these sources or they're sources from the past that you've either used or that I've provided. And so I want you to do an analysis of a lived experience and how that, and see if you can feel how any of those philosophical topics that we've discussed are kind of playing out in that experience. Again, if you have questions or concerns, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be posting this in the discussion forum, 200 words minimum this week, a little bit longer. Of course, you'll always be interacting with at least one other person like you have in the past. And the purpose of this, right, is to give you more a firsthand experience, more experience in the area that you are interested in writing your essay in and ultimately developing your project. So that is the overall purpose of this. So if you feel like, oh my goodness, I really don't know what to do for that, this is the time to decide. This is the week. I want you to start thinking about it. Next week, you'll have your annotated bib and your outline due. So we're out of time. We got to commit to something, okay? And going out and getting a lived experience and doing a short analysis, just a philosophical analysis of that experience, is what I want you to do for this week, okay? So questions, concerns, all you have to do is reach out to me. I am happy to discuss those details with you. at any time. And I will see you next week with more details about annotated bib and outline.